The December wind cut through downtown Nashville like a blade, carrying with it the bitter cold of a Tennessee winter that seemed to mirror the harsh realities facing Randy Travis as he stood outside the Greyhound bus station on Broadway, clutching a worn duffel bag that contained everything he owned in the world. At 34 years old, he had spent the better part of a decade pursuing a dream that had brought him tantalizingly close to success, only to watch it crumble in a series of professional disappointments and personal setbacks that had left him questioning everything he thought he knew about his talent, his future, and his place in the music industry that had once seemed so promising. The year 1993 had been a devastating period for Randy, marked by a string of professional failures that had systematically dismantled the career momentum he had worked so hard to build throughout the late 1980s and early 90s. His recent album releases had failed to achieve the commercial success that his record label executives expected, leading to increasingly uncomfortable meetings where his artistic direction was questioned and his market viability was analyzed with the cold efficiency of a business enterprise that had little patience for sentiment or artistic integrity when profits were declining. The final blow had come just 3 weeks earlier when his record label had officially dropped him from their roster, citing poor sales performance and changing market conditions that favored younger artists with more contemporary sounds and broader crossover appeal. The termination of his recording contract had been delivered with the kind of corporate politeness that made the rejection even more painful, as executives who had once praised his traditional country sound now spoke about market research and demographic trends that suggested his style of music was no longer commercially viable. The loss of his recording contract had triggered a cascade of other professional disasters that had quickly unraveled the entire infrastructure of his music career. His booking agency had terminated their representation agreement, citing the difficulty of securing performance opportunities for artists without active recording deals. His management team had followed suit, explaining that they could no longer justify the time and resources required to represent an artist whose commercial prospects had become so uncertain. Even more painful than the professional rejections had been the personal costs of his career decline. The financial pressures of maintaining his Nashville lifestyle while his income disappeared had forced him to sell his house, his car, and most of his possessions, leaving him with barely enough money to purchase a bus ticket back to North Carolina, where he hoped to find temporary refuge with family members who might help him figure out his next steps. The bus station itself was a gritty, depressing place that served as a way station for people whose circumstances had reduced them to the cheapest and most basic form of transportation available. The waiting area was filled with a mixture of travelers, elderly people visiting distant relatives, young adults seeking opportunities in new cities, and individuals whose lives had taken unexpected turns that left them dependent on public transportation to reach uncertain destinations. Randy had been waiting for over 2 hours for his bus to Charlotte, dealing with mechanical delays and scheduling changes that had stretched his already difficult journey into an endurance test of patience and emotional resilience. The long wait had given him too much time to think about the magnitude of his failure and the uncertain future that awaited him in North Carolina, where he would have to face family members and childhood friends who had followed his career with pride and excitement only to witness its spectacular collapse. As he sat in the uncomfortable plastic chairs of the waiting area, Randy became aware that he was attracting attention from other passengers who seemed to recognize him from his years of television appearances and concert performances. The recognition was not the kind of positive fan interaction he had experienced during the height of his career, but rather a mixture of curiosity, pity, and barely concealed amusement at seeing a former celebrity reduced to traveling by bus like any other ordinary person facing financial difficulties. A group of young men in their 20s, who appeared to be traveling together and had been drinking alcohol despite the early afternoon hour, began making increasingly loud comments about Randy's presence in the bus station. Their observations started as whispered conversations among themselves, but gradually became more audible and pointed as they seemed to enjoy the entertainment value of encountering a fallen star in such reduced circumstances. The leader of the group, a cocky young man with an expensive leather jacket and an attitude that suggested he had never experienced significant failure or disappointment in his own life, began making comments about how far Randy had fallen from his previous status as a successful recording artist. His observations were delivered with the casual cruelty of someone who viewed another person's misfortune as a source of amusement rather than empathy. The comments escalated as the young man began speculating loudly about what kind of poor decisions and personal failures must have led to Randy's current circumstances. He made jokes about washed-up country singers and the inevitable decline that awaited artists who couldn't adapt to changing musical trends and audience preferences. His commentary was clearly intended to be overheard by Randy and other passengers, creating a public spectacle of humiliation. Other passengers in the waiting area began to take notice of the harassment, with some looking uncomfortable at the cruel nature of the comments, while others seemed to find entertainment in the unexpected drama unfolding in their midst. The atmosphere in the bus station became tense and uncomfortable as people processed what they were witnessing and tried to determine how to respond to such a public display of mockery and cruelty. The harassment reached its peak when the young man began loudly questioning whether Randy could even afford a bus ticket or if he was reduced to begging for transportation money from strangers. The attack was not just on Randy's current circumstances, but on his fundamental dignity and worth as a human being, suggesting that his professional failures had somehow made him less deserving of basic respect and consideration. Randy felt the familiar burning sensation of humiliation and anger rising in his chest as the cruel comments continued, and other passengers turned to stare at him with varying mixtures of pity, curiosity, and embarrassment. The public nature of the attack made it impossible to ignore or escape, trapping him in a situation where his private struggles and professional disappointments had become entertainment for strangers who knew nothing about his character, his efforts, or the genuine love he had for music that had motivated his career from the beginning. For several long moments, Randy sat in silence, wrestling with conflicting impulses about how to respond to such deliberate cruelty and public humiliation. Part of him wanted to confront the young man directly and defend himself against the unfair characterizations and assumptions about his circumstances and character. Another part of him simply wanted to find a way to escape the situation and avoid further confrontation that might escalate the conflict and create even more embarrassment. However, as Randy looked around the bus station and saw the faces of other passengers who were watching the situation unfold, he began to notice details that his initial embarrassment and anger had prevented him from observing clearly. Many of the people in the waiting area appeared to be facing their own difficulties and challenges, traveling by bus because of financial constraints, family emergencies, or other circumstances that had brought them to this basic and unglamorous form of transportation. He saw an elderly woman clutching a small suitcase and looking tired and worried, probably traveling to visit a sick relative or deal with some family crisis. There was a young mother with 2 small children who looked exhausted and stressed, perhaps moving to a new city in search of better opportunities or escaping from difficult circumstances. Several other passengers appeared to be working-class people whose clothing and luggage suggested they were traveling for practical rather than recreational purposes. The realization that he was surrounded by people who were dealing with their own struggles and challenges began to shift Randy's perspective on his situation and the cruel comments he was enduring. Rather than viewing the harassment as purely personal humiliation, he started to see it as an attack on the dignity of everyone in the bus station, who found themselves in circumstances that others might view as evidence of failure or inadequacy. This broader understanding of what the harassment represented gave Randy a different framework for thinking about how to respond to the situation. Instead of defending himself personally or simply trying to escape the confrontation, he began to consider whether there might be a way to respond that would address not just his own humiliation, but the implicit attack on the worth and dignity of everyone who was sharing this experience with him. The decision to speak up required considerable courage, as it meant risking further humiliation and potential escalation of the conflict, with people who had already demonstrated their willingness to be cruel and disrespectful. However, Randy felt that the situation had moved beyond personal embarrassment to touch on fundamental questions about how people should treat each other and what values should guide human interactions, especially when dealing with individuals who might be facing difficulties or challenges. When Randy finally stood up and began to address the group of young men who had been harassing him, his voice carried the same clarity and emotional authenticity that had made him a compelling performer, but without any trace of the polished showmanship that characterized his professional appearances. Instead, he spoke as a human being who had experienced both success and failure, and who had learned important lessons about the unpredictable nature of life and the importance of treating others with dignity regardless of their circumstances. His impromptu speech began not with a defense of his own career or circumstances, but with observations about the diverse group of people who were sharing the bus station that afternoon, and the various reasons that might have brought them to this place. He talked about the elderly woman who might be traveling to care for a sick family member, the young mother who was probably trying to create better opportunities for her children, and the working people who were using the most affordable transportation available to them. Randy's words gradually transformed the atmosphere in the bus station from one of tension and cruelty to something approaching reverence and reflection, as passengers began to understand that they were witnessing something extraordinary. His ability to speak about common human experiences and shared vulnerabilities created connections between people who had been strangers just moments before. He shared his own story not as a way of seeking sympathy or defending his choices, but as an example of how quickly circumstances could change for anyone, and how important it was to remember that success and failure were often temporary conditions that said more about timing and circumstances than about fundamental human worth. His honesty about his own struggles and disappointments created space for others to acknowledge their own challenges without shame or embarrassment. As Randy continued speaking, other passengers began to move closer, drawn by the authenticity and wisdom of his words. What had started as a response to cruel harassment was evolving into something that resembled a community gathering, where people were connecting around shared experiences of struggle, hope, and human resilience. The young men who had initiated the harassment looked increasingly uncomfortable as they realized that their cruel entertainment had backfired, transforming Randy from a target of mockery into a source of inspiration and wisdom for everyone present. Their attempts to diminish him had instead revealed his character and strength while exposing their own lack of empathy and maturity. The speech reached its emotional climax when Randy began to talk about the value of treating others with kindness and respect, regardless of their circumstances, and the importance of remembering that everyone was fighting battles and facing challenges that might not be immediately visible to observers. His words created a moment of reflection that seemed to touch everyone present and challenged them to consider their own attitudes and behaviors toward people they encountered. The response from the other passengers was immediate and overwhelming, with spontaneous applause that filled the bus station and created a sense of community and shared purpose that transformed the entire atmosphere of the space. People who had been strangers began talking to each other, sharing their own stories and creating connections that went far beyond the typical anonymous interactions of public transportation. The elderly woman approached Randy to thank him for his words and to share that she was indeed traveling to care for her sick husband, expressing gratitude for his recognition of her situation and his reminder that such journeys represented love and dedication rather than unfortunate circumstances. The young mother also spoke with him, explaining that she was moving across the country to start a new job that would provide better opportunities for her family. Even some of the young men who had been harassing him eventually approached to apologize for their behavior, acknowledging that they had been cruel and thoughtless in their treatment of someone who was clearly dealing with difficult circumstances. Their apologies seemed genuine and reflected a recognition that Randy's response had taught them something important about empathy and human dignity. The bus station manager, who had witnessed the entire incident, approached Randy to express his appreciation for the way he had handled the situation and the positive impact his words had created among the passengers. The manager mentioned that he had worked in transportation for over 20 years and had rarely seen anything that had brought people together and created such a positive atmosphere in what was usually a place of stress and anonymous transit. When Randy's bus finally arrived and boarding was announced, the other passengers who had shared the experience began to approach him with expressions of gratitude and encouragement. Many shared their contact information and invited him to stay in touch, creating connections that extended the impact of the afternoon far beyond the bus station encounter. The bus ride itself became a continuation of the community that had formed in the station, with passengers continuing conversations that had begun during Randy's speech and maintaining the atmosphere of mutual support and understanding that his words had created. The driver, who had heard about the incident from passengers as they boarded, made a point of thanking Randy for creating such a positive experience for everyone involved. Word of the bus station incident began to spread immediately through both traditional and informal communication networks, as passengers shared their experiences with family members, friends, and colleagues. The story took on a life of its own as people retold Randy's response to harassment and the community-building impact it had created among strangers who found themselves connected by his words and example. Local Nashville media outlets picked up the story within days, with reporters interviewing passengers who had been present during the incident and capturing their accounts of how Randy's speech had transformed a negative situation into something inspiring and meaningful. The coverage focused not on his career struggles or financial difficulties, but on the character and wisdom he had demonstrated in responding to adversity with grace and compassion. The story resonated particularly strongly with other people who had experienced professional setbacks or personal challenges, finding inspiration in Randy's example of how to maintain dignity and create positive impact even during difficult periods. The incident became a touchstone for discussions about resilience, empathy, and the importance of treating others with kindness, regardless of their circumstances. Music industry professionals who had written off Randy as a has-been began to reconsider their assessments as the story of the bus station incident spread throughout Nashville and beyond. Record label executives, booking agents, and other industry figures started to understand that his response to adversity had demonstrated exactly the kind of character and authenticity that country music audiences valued most highly. The positive publicity generated by the bus station incident led to renewed interest in Randy's music and career, with several industry professionals reaching out to discuss potential opportunities for recording contracts, performance bookings, and other professional collaborations. The incident had inadvertently become the best marketing campaign of his career, demonstrating his values and character in ways that no amount of traditional promotion could have achieved. More importantly, the bus station experience had given Randy a new perspective on his career and his purpose as an artist, helping him understand that his value as a performer was not solely dependent on commercial success or industry recognition, but on his ability to connect with people and create meaningful experiences through his music and his character. The incident became part of country music folklore, frequently retold as an example of how true artists could maintain their integrity and create positive impact regardless of their professional circumstances. The story inspired other musicians facing career difficulties to persevere through challenging periods, while maintaining their commitment to the values and relationships that had motivated their artistic pursuits from the beginning. For Randy himself, the bus station incident marked the beginning of a career renaissance that was built not just on musical talent, but on the authentic character and genuine empathy he had demonstrated during one of his most difficult periods. The experience taught him that his greatest strength as an artist lay not in his ability to achieve commercial success, but in his capacity to connect with people and create moments of meaning and inspiration through his words and actions. The bus ride that had begun as a retreat from failure had become the foundation for a new understanding of what it meant to be successful, as both an artist and a human being. Randy's decision to respond to cruelty with wisdom and to use his own struggles as a way of connecting with and supporting others had created a legacy that extended far beyond any single song or album, demonstrating the power of authentic character to transform even the most difficult circumstances into opportunities for positive impact and meaningful connection. The story of that December afternoon at the Nashville bus station proved that sometimes the most important journeys were not the ones that led to fame or fortune, but the ones that revealed character and created connections that reminded people of their shared humanity and common struggles. Randy's response to mockery and humiliation had become a legend, not because it advanced his career, but because it had demonstrated the kind of grace and wisdom that inspired others to treat each other with greater kindness and understanding. The young mother who had been traveling with her children that day later wrote to Randy to tell him that his words had given her courage to face the challenges of starting over in a new city, and that she had taught her children about the importance of treating others with kindness based on the example they had witnessed at the bus station. Her letter became one of many that Randy received from people whose lives had been touched by the incident. The elderly woman who had been traveling to care for her sick husband also maintained contact with Randy, sending him updates about her family situation and expressing ongoing gratitude for the moment of recognition and dignity he had provided during one of the most difficult periods of her life. Their correspondence became a lasting friendship that demonstrated the enduring impact of authentic human connection. Even some of the young men who had initially harassed Randy sought him out years later to thank him for the lesson his response had taught them about empathy and human dignity. Several mentioned that the incident had fundamentally changed their understanding of how to treat others and had influenced their own personal and professional relationships in positive ways. The bus station where the incident had occurred eventually installed a small plaque commemorating the afternoon when an artist's response to adversity had created a moment of community and connection that inspired everyone present. The plaque served as a reminder that extraordinary moments of human grace and wisdom could emerge from the most ordinary circumstances when individuals chose to respond to challenges with courage and compassion. The legend of Randy's bus station speech continued to inspire new generations of musicians and artists who faced their own struggles with career disappointments and personal setbacks. The story became a testament to the power of authentic character to create lasting impact that transcended commercial success or professional recognition, proving that the most meaningful legacies were often built through moments of genuine human connection and moral courage. Years later, when Randy had re-established his career and achieved new levels of success and recognition, he would often reference the bus station incident as the most important experience of his professional life, not because it had led to renewed commercial opportunities, but because it had taught him essential lessons about purpose, character, and the responsibility that came with being given a platform to influence and inspire others. The story of that December afternoon continued to resonate with people facing their own challenges and setbacks, serving as a reminder that dignity and grace could be maintained even in the most difficult circumstances, and that responding to cruelty with wisdom could create positive change that extended far beyond immediate situations. Randy's decision to transform his humiliation into an opportunity for connection and inspiration had created a legacy that proved the most powerful victories were often those that healed relationships and strengthened communities, rather than advanced individual careers or accumulated personal recognition. The bus ride home had indeed become a legend, but not because it represented escape from failure or retreat from difficulty. Instead, it had become legendary because it demonstrated how individual choices to respond to adversity with courage and compassion could create ripple effects that touched countless lives and established new standards for how people could treat each other with dignity and respect, regardless of their circumstances or status in life. The immediate aftermath of the bus station incident continued to unfold in remarkable ways as passengers from that December afternoon began sharing their experiences with family members, friends, and colleagues throughout their respective communities. The story took on a life of its own as people retold Randy's response to harassment and the transformative impact it had created among strangers who found themselves connected by his wisdom and example of grace under pressure. Dr. Patricia Williams, a psychology professor at Vanderbilt University, who had been at the bus station that day visiting her elderly mother in Charlotte, was so moved by what she had witnessed that she began incorporating the incident into her research on resilience and social psychology. Dr. Angel Williams had spent her career studying how individuals responded to adversity and public humiliation, but she had rarely observed such a powerful example of someone transforming a potentially devastating situation into an opportunity for community building and positive impact. Dr. Williams' academic analysis of the bus station incident, which she eventually published in the Journal of Applied Social Psychology, identified specific elements of Randy's response that had contributed to its effectiveness in transforming a hostile environment into a supportive community. Her research highlighted the importance of vulnerability, authenticity, and the ability to connect individual struggles to universal human experiences that resonated with diverse audiences. The academic attention given to the bus station incident helped establish it as a significant case study in crisis communication and community building that was examined by scholars, therapists, and social workers throughout the region and beyond. The story became a teaching tool for professionals who worked with individuals facing public humiliation, career setbacks, and other forms of personal crisis that required resilient responses and community support. The impact on the Nashville music community was profound and immediate, with industry professionals who had dismissed Randy as a has-been beginning to reconsider their assessments of his character and potential value as both an artist and a representative of country music values. The story of his graceful response to adversity began circulating through industry networks, creating new opportunities and changing perceptions about his marketability and artistic authenticity. Music Row executives who had previously viewed Randy's career decline as evidence of his inability to adapt to changing market conditions began to understand that his response to the bus station harassment demonstrated exactly the kind of authentic character and genuine connection to working-class values that country music audiences craved from their artists. The incident had inadvertently provided better evidence of his commercial viability than any amount of market research or focus group testing could have achieved. Record label president Sarah Mitchell, whose company specialized in traditional country music artists, reached out to Randy within a week of hearing about the bus station incident. Mitchell had been following his career for years and had always respected his musical talent, but the story of his response to public humiliation convinced her that he possessed the kind of authentic character that could resonate powerfully with audiences who were hungry for genuine artistic expression. Mitchell's interest led to a recording contract that was based not just on Randy's musical abilities, but on the understanding that his life experiences and demonstrated character made him uniquely qualified to create music that spoke to people facing their own struggles and challenges. The new recording deal represented a different approach to artist development that emphasized authenticity and life experience over youth and marketable image. The first album Randy recorded under his new contract featured several songs directly inspired by the bus station incident and the lessons he had learned about resilience, community, and the importance of treating others with dignity, regardless of their circumstances. The songs resonated powerfully with audiences who recognized the genuine emotion and hard-won wisdom that informed his artistic expression. The commercial success of Randy's comeback album surprised industry observers who had written him off as unable to connect with contemporary audiences. The record achieved both critical acclaim and strong sales, demonstrating that there was indeed a significant market for artists who could speak authentically about real-life struggles and the human capacity for resilience and grace under pressure. The success also influenced how other country music artists approached their own careers and public personas, with many beginning to prioritize authenticity and genuine life experience over manufactured images and calculated market positioning. The bus station incident had inadvertently started a movement toward more honest and vulnerable artistic expression within the country music community. The story also reached beyond the music industry to influence broader cultural conversations about how society treated individuals who experienced professional setbacks or personal difficulties. The incident became a touchstone for discussions about empathy, social support, and the importance of maintaining dignity and community connections during challenging periods of life. Social service organizations throughout Tennessee began using the bus station story as a training tool for volunteers and staff members who worked with individuals facing homelessness, unemployment, and other forms of economic hardship. The incident provided a powerful example of how to recognize and respond to the fundamental humanity and dignity of people, regardless of their current circumstances. The Tennessee Department of Human Services developed a comprehensive training program based on the bus station incident that taught social workers and case managers how to approach their clients with the same respect and recognition of human worth that Randy had demonstrated during his impromptu speech. The program showed measurable improvements in client satisfaction and service outcomes. Educational institutions throughout the region also found valuable lessons in the bus station story, with teachers and administrators using it as an example of how to address bullying, social exclusion, and other forms of cruel behavior that could occur in school environments. The incident provided a model for how victims of harassment could respond with dignity while educating their tormentors about empathy and human worth. The Nashville public school system eventually incorporated the bus station story into their character education curriculum, using it as a foundation for discussions about kindness, resilience, and the importance of treating all community members with respect regardless of their social status or personal circumstances. Students responded enthusiastically to the story and frequently referenced it in their own discussions about fairness and community responsibility. The impact on transportation services and public spaces was also notable, with the Greyhound Corporation recognizing the positive publicity that had emerged from the incident and beginning to train their employees in conflict resolution and customer service approaches that emphasize dignity and respect for all passengers, regardless of their economic circumstances or travel reasons. The Nashville bus station where the incident had occurred experienced a significant transformation in atmosphere and customer relations as word of Randy's speech spread throughout the community. Staff members began approaching their work with increased sensitivity to the diverse circumstances that brought people to public transportation, creating a more welcoming and supportive environment for all travelers. Bus drivers throughout the Greyhound system began hearing about the incident, and many started incorporating similar principles of respect and community building into their own interactions with passengers. The story became part of driver training programs that emphasized the potential for public transportation to serve not just as a means of travel, but as a space where human dignity and mutual support could be demonstrated and practiced. The story also influenced religious communities throughout the region, with ministers and spiritual leaders finding powerful connections between Randy's response to harassment and biblical principles of turning the other cheek, treating strangers with kindness, and finding strength through adversity. Several churches began featuring the bus station incident in their sermons and religious education programs. Reverend David Johnson of the First Methodist Church of Nashville, who had been following Randy's career and personal struggles, developed a comprehensive sermon series based on the bus station incident that explored themes of grace, redemption, and the possibility for personal transformation through faithful response to life's challenges. His sermons attracted overflow crowds and were eventually recorded and distributed to Methodist churches throughout the Southeast. The religious interpretation of the bus station story helped establish it as more than just a celebrity anecdote or career comeback story, elevating it to the level of a spiritual teaching that demonstrated how individuals could find purpose and meaning even in their most difficult circumstances. The incident became part of broader conversations about faith, resilience, and the role of spiritual values in guiding responses to adversity. Christian counseling centers throughout the region began using the bus station story as a foundation for their programs, helping individuals cope with job loss, financial difficulties, and other forms of personal crisis. The incident provided a concrete example of how faith-based principles could be applied to real-world challenges in ways that created positive outcomes for both individuals and communities. The influence on the broader entertainment industry was also significant, with agents, managers, and other industry professionals beginning to recognize that authentic character and genuine life experience could be valuable assets for artists rather than liabilities to be managed or hidden. The bus station incident had demonstrated that vulnerability and honesty could create powerful connections with audiences. Talent agencies throughout Nashville began recruiting artists who had overcome significant personal or professional challenges, recognizing that their experiences of struggle and resilience could translate into authentic artistic expression that resonated with audiences who were facing their own difficulties. The industry began to value lived experience and character development as important qualifications for artistic success. The story also influenced how entertainment industry professionals approached artist development and career management, with many beginning to prioritize long-term character building and authentic artistic expression over short-term commercial strategies and manufactured image creation. The bus station incident had proven that genuine human connection could be more valuable than any amount of marketing or promotion. Music festivals and concert venues throughout the country began inviting Randy to perform not just as a musical artist, but as a speaker and workshop leader who could share insights about resilience, community building, and maintaining dignity during difficult periods. His appearances became popular with audiences who were hungry for authentic inspiration and practical wisdom about overcoming adversity. The festival appearances also allowed Randy to continue the community-building work that had begun at the bus station, creating opportunities for audience members to connect with each other around shared experiences of struggle and hope. His concerts became gatherings that went beyond entertainment to provide genuine support and encouragement for people facing their own challenges. The impact on Randy's personal life and sense of purpose was equally profound, with the bus station experience fundamentally changing his understanding of what it meant to be successful as both an artist and a human being. The incident had taught him that his greatest value lay not in his ability to achieve commercial success, but in his capacity to create meaningful connections and provide genuine support for people who needed encouragement and inspiration. Randy began dedicating significant portions of his time to volunteer work with homeless shelters, job training programs, and other organizations that served people experiencing economic hardship and personal crisis. His involvement went beyond celebrity appearances to include hands-on work and genuine relationship building with individuals who were facing circumstances similar to those he had experienced during his own difficult period. The volunteer work also provided Randy with ongoing inspiration for his songwriting and artistic expression, helping him stay connected to the authentic experiences and emotions that had made his comeback music so powerful and meaningful. His continued involvement with people facing adversity kept his artistic work grounded in genuine human experience, rather than abstract or manufactured emotion. The bus station incident also influenced Randy's approach to his renewed career success, with his experiences of failure and public humiliation helping him maintain perspective and humility even as his professional opportunities and recognition increased. He regularly referenced the lessons learned during that December afternoon as reminders of what truly mattered in life and career. The story continued to spread through social media and online communities as people shared accounts of the incident and discussed its implications for how individuals could respond to adversity and create positive change in their communities. The tale became viral content that inspired countless discussions about empathy, resilience, and social responsibility. Online forums dedicated to country music and entertainment began featuring regular discussions about the bus station incident and its ongoing influence on Randy's career and the broader industry. Fans shared their own stories of overcoming adversity and finding inspiration in Randy's example of grace under pressure and commitment to community building. The international impact of the story was also notable, with country music fans and social service organizations in other countries learning about the bus station incident through online communities and international media coverage. The story resonated with people facing similar challenges around the world and demonstrated universal principles of human dignity and mutual support. European country music festivals began inviting Randy to perform and speak about his experiences, creating opportunities for international audiences to learn about the values and principles that had guided his response to adversity. His international appearances helped spread the message of the bus station incident to new audiences who found inspiration in his example. The academic study of the bus station incident continued to expand as researchers from various disciplines recognized its significance as a case study in resilience, community building, and positive response to crisis. Sociology professors began using the story to explore concepts of social support, public humiliation, and the factors that contributed to successful recovery from setbacks. The University of Tennessee eventually established a research center focused on studying resilience and community response to adversity that was inspired by the bus station incident and the positive outcomes it had generated. The center became a resource for individuals and organizations throughout the region who were working to build stronger, more supportive communities. The research conducted at the center confirmed many of the principles that Randy had intuitively applied during his bus station speech, providing scientific validation for the approaches he had used to transform a hostile situation into a supportive community experience. The findings helped establish evidence-based practices for community building and crisis response that could be applied in various settings. Mental health professionals throughout the region also found valuable applications for the lessons learned from the bus station incident, incorporating Randy's approaches to vulnerability, authenticity, and community connection into their therapeutic practices. The story provided a compelling example of how individuals could maintain dignity and create positive outcomes even during their most difficult periods. Therapists working with clients who had experienced public humiliation, career setbacks, or other forms of personal crisis began using the bus station story as an inspiration for helping their clients develop resilient responses and maintain hope during challenging circumstances. The incident demonstrated that even the most difficult situations could become opportunities for growth and positive impact. The ongoing influence of the bus station incident on Randy's artistic work remained strong throughout his renewed career, with many of his subsequent songs reflecting the themes of resilience, community support, and human dignity that had been central to his transformative speech that December afternoon. His music continued to resonate with audiences who recognized the authenticity of his message and the genuine experience that informed his artistic expression. The story of the bus station speech also became part of Randy's standard concert repertoire, with audiences requesting that he share the tale and discuss its ongoing influence on his life and career. These storytelling segments became some of the most powerful and memorable parts of his live performances, creating connections with audiences that went far beyond musical entertainment. The legacy of that December afternoon at the Nashville bus station continued to influence discussions about adversity, resilience, and community support throughout Tennessee and beyond, proving that individual moments of courage and grace could create lasting positive change that extended far beyond immediate circumstances. Randy's decision to respond to mockery with wisdom and compassion had established a model for how people could transform their most difficult experiences into opportunities for meaningful connection and positive impact. Most importantly, the bus station incident demonstrated that true success was measured not by the absence of failure or the avoidance of difficult circumstances, but by the character and grace with which individuals responded to challenges and their willingness to use their own experiences of struggle to support and encourage others facing similar difficulties. Randy's ride home had become legendary because it proved that the most meaningful journeys were often those that revealed character and created connections that reminded people of their shared humanity and common struggles. The ripple effects of the bus station incident continued to expand throughout the years that followed, touching lives and communities in ways that far exceeded anything Randy could have imagined during that difficult December afternoon, when he had simply been trying to maintain his dignity in the face of cruel harassment. The story became a touchstone for discussions about resilience, empathy, and the power of individual actions to create positive change that extended far beyond immediate circumstances. The transformation in Randy's career trajectory was nothing short of remarkable, with the authenticity and character he had demonstrated during the bus station incident becoming the foundation for a renaissance that surpassed even his earlier commercial success. However, the renewed recognition and professional opportunities that followed were meaningful to him primarily because they provided platforms for continuing the community-building work that had begun during his impromptu speech to fellow bus passengers. Randy's subsequent albums consistently reflected the themes and values that had emerged from his bus station experience, with songs that explored concepts of resilience, community support, and the importance of treating all people with dignity regardless of their circumstances. His music began to attract audiences who were drawn not just to his vocal abilities and musical craftsmanship, but to the authentic life experience and genuine wisdom that informed his artistic expression. The commercial success of these albums demonstrated that there was indeed a significant market for music that addressed real-life struggles and celebrated the human capacity for grace under pressure. Radio programmers who had previously dismissed Randy as commercially unviable began to recognize that his authentic approach to difficult themes resonated powerfully with audiences who were hungry for genuine artistic expression rather than manufactured entertainment. Concert promoters throughout the country began booking Randy not just as a musical performer, but as an inspirational speaker whose story of overcoming adversity through character and community connection could provide hope and encouragement for audiences facing their own challenges. His live performances became events that combined entertainment with genuine inspiration and practical wisdom about resilience and personal growth. The venue for these concerts often included unconventional spaces such as community centers, churches, and other locations where people gathering might need encouragement and support rather than simply entertainment. Randy's willingness to perform in these settings demonstrated his continued commitment to using his restored platform for purposes that aligned with the values he had discovered during his lowest point. Youth organizations throughout the region began inviting Randy to speak at their events and programs, recognizing that his story of overcoming public humiliation and professional failure could provide valuable lessons for young people who were facing their own challenges with bullying, academic pressure, and social exclusion. His presentations became popular with audiences who appreciated his honest approach to discussing difficulty and failure. The educational impact of Randy's speaking engagements extended beyond entertainment to include practical guidance about developing resilience, maintaining dignity during difficult periods, and finding ways to use personal struggles as opportunities for growth and service to others. Young people who attended his presentations frequently reported that his example had influenced their own approaches to dealing with adversity and interpersonal conflict. High school guidance counselors throughout Tennessee began incorporating Randy's story into their programming for students who were dealing with academic setbacks, social difficulties, or family challenges that affected their educational progress. The bus station incident provided a concrete example of how setbacks could be transformed into opportunities for character development and positive impact. The impact on professional development and corporate training programs was also significant, with business organizations recognizing that the communication principles Randy had demonstrated during the bus station incident could be valuable tools for improving workplace relationships and conflict resolution. Human resources professionals began using his story as a case study in effective leadership and team building. Several major corporations eventually hired Randy to conduct workshops and training sessions for their employees, focusing on themes of resilience, authentic communication, and building supportive workplace communities. His corporate presentations demonstrated how the same principles that had transformed a hostile bus station environment could improve professional relationships and organizational culture. The success of these corporate programs led to increased demand for Randy's services as a consultant and speaker, creating new career opportunities that allowed him to combine his musical talents with his developing expertise in community building and conflict resolution. The diversity of his professional activities reflected the broad applicability of the lessons learned during his bus station experience. The ongoing relationship between Randy and many of the people who had been present during the original bus station incident continued to develop and deepen over the years, creating a network of connections that demonstrated the lasting impact of authentic human encounter and mutual support. These relationships became sources of ongoing inspiration and accountability that helped Randy maintain his commitment to the values he had discovered during his difficult period. The elderly woman who had been traveling to care for her sick husband became one of Randy's closest friends and advisors, providing guidance and perspective that helped him navigate his renewed career success while maintaining his commitment to authentic living and community service. Their friendship became a symbol of the intergenerational connections that could emerge from shared experiences of struggle and mutual support. The young mother who had been traveling with her children also maintained contact with Randy, regularly updating him about her family's progress and expressing ongoing gratitude for the encouragement and recognition he had provided during one of the most challenging periods of her life. Her success in establishing herself in a new city became one of many examples of the positive outcomes that had resulted from the community connections formed during that December afternoon. Even some of the young men who had initially harassed Randy continued to seek opportunities for interaction and learning, demonstrating genuine remorse for their earlier behavior and expressing appreciation for the patience and grace he had shown in responding to their cruelty. Their personal growth and changed attitudes provided evidence of the transformative power of responding to hostility with wisdom and compassion rather than anger and retaliation. The bus station where the incident had occurred became an unofficial pilgrimage site for people who had been inspired by Randy's story and wanted to visit the location where such a powerful example of grace under pressure had been demonstrated. The facility management eventually created a small memorial display that commemorated the afternoon when a simple bus ride had become a lesson in human dignity and community building. The display featured photographs and newspaper clippings from the incident, along with quotations from passengers who had been present during Randy's speech and testimonials from people whose lives had been influenced by the story. The memorial became a popular destination for tour groups and individuals who were interested in learning about examples of positive response to adversity. The Greyhound Corporation eventually recognized the positive publicity that had emerged from the bus station incident by implementing company-wide training programs based on the principles Randy had demonstrated during his interaction with fellow passengers. The training emphasized dignity, respect, and community building as core values that should guide all customer service interactions. The success of Greyhound's training program led to measurable improvements in customer satisfaction and employee morale throughout their network, demonstrating the practical business benefits of treating all customers with dignity and respect, regardless of their economic circumstances or travel reasons. The program became a model for other transportation companies seeking to improve their service culture. The story of the bus station incident also influenced government policy discussions about public transportation, social services, and community support systems, with policymakers recognizing that the principles demonstrated during Randy's speech could inform approaches to addressing homelessness, unemployment, and other forms of social distress. The incident became part of broader conversations about creating more supportive and inclusive communities. Social service agencies throughout Tennessee began adopting communication strategies and program approaches based on the bus station incident, emphasizing dignity, respect, and recognition of individual worth as fundamental principles that should guide all interactions with clients regardless of their circumstances or challenges. These approaches showed improved outcomes in terms of client engagement and program effectiveness. The influence on the broader country music industry continued to deepen as other artists began to recognize the commercial and artistic value of authentic life experience and genuine connection to working-class values and struggles. The success of Randy's comeback demonstrated that audiences were hungry for music that addressed real-life challenges with honesty and wisdom rather than escapist entertainment. Record labels throughout Nashville began seeking artists who could demonstrate similar authenticity and character, recognizing that genuine life experience could be more valuable than manufactured image or calculated market positioning. The industry began to prioritize artistic integrity and authentic expression over purely commercial considerations. The impact on country music festivals and live events was also notable, with promoters beginning to include more programming that addressed themes of resilience, community support, and social responsibility. These events became gatherings that went beyond entertainment to provide genuine inspiration and practical support for audiences facing their own challenges. The story of Randy's bus station speech became a frequent topic at industry conferences and professional development events, with executives and artists discussing the lessons learned about authentic marketing, genuine fan engagement, and the commercial value of demonstrated character and integrity. The incident provided a case study in how authentic behavior could create more powerful connections with audiences than any amount of traditional promotion. Music education programs throughout the region began incorporating Randy's story into their curricula as an example of how musical careers could be built on foundations of character and authentic expression rather than just technical skill and commercial ambition. Students learned about the importance of maintaining integrity and community connections as essential elements of sustainable artistic careers. The Randy Travis Scholarship Program, which was eventually established at several universities throughout Tennessee, provided financial support for students who demonstrated both musical talent and commitment to community service and character development. The scholarship became highly competitive and attracted applicants who were inspired by the principles demonstrated during the bus station incident. The long-term impact on Randy's personal relationships and family life was equally profound, with the lessons learned during the bus station experience influencing his approach to marriage, parenting, and community involvement throughout the remainder of his life. The incident had taught him essential truths about the importance of authenticity, vulnerability, and service to others as foundations for meaningful relationships. Randy's eventual marriage and family life reflected the values he had discovered during his difficult period, with his commitment to treating all people with dignity and respect extending to his roles as husband and father. His children grew up understanding that their father's greatest achievement was not his musical success, but his character and his commitment to using his platform for positive purposes. The story of the bus station incident became part of Randy's family legacy, passed down to his children as an example of how challenges could be transformed into opportunities for growth and service to others. The tale became a touchstone for family discussions about values, character, and the importance of treating all people with kindness and respect. The international recognition of Randy's story eventually led to invitations to perform and speak in other countries, where audiences found universal applications for the principles he had demonstrated during his response to harassment and adversity. His international appearances helped spread the message of the bus station incident to new cultures and communities facing their own challenges. The cross-cultural appeal of Randy's story demonstrated that the values of dignity, respect, and community support transcended national and cultural boundaries, providing hope and inspiration for people facing adversity, regardless of their background or circumstances. The incident became part of global conversations about resilience and human dignity. The lasting legacy of that December afternoon at the Nashville bus station continued to influence discussions about character, community, and authentic living throughout Tennessee and beyond, proving that individual moments of grace and wisdom could create lasting positive change that extended across generations and geographical boundaries. Randy's decision to respond to mockery with compassion and understanding had established a template for how people could transform their most difficult experiences into opportunities for meaningful connection and positive impact. The story remained a powerful reminder that true success was measured not by the achievement of fame or wealth, but by the character and grace with which individuals responded to challenges and their willingness to use their own experiences of struggle to support and encourage others facing similar difficulties. The ride home that had begun as a retreat from failure had become a journey toward understanding the deeper purposes of life and the importance of maintaining human dignity and community connection, regardless of external circumstances or recognition. Most importantly, the bus station incident proved that extraordinary moments of inspiration and community building could emerge from the most ordinary circumstances when individuals chose to respond to challenges with courage, wisdom, and genuine concern for the welfare of others. Randy's spontaneous decision to address his harassment with a speech about shared humanity had created a legacy that continued to influence lives and communities decades later, demonstrating the enduring power of authentic character and compassionate action to create positive change in the world.